Flight of Fear is a Premier Rides indoor launch coaster that opened in 1996 at Kings Island. The ride is located in the newly rethemed Area 72 section of the park, along with the park's newest coaster, Orion. The theming throughout the land is fantastic, but the theming in the queue of Flight of Fear is even more impressive. The ride is themed to a research base trying to see how UFOs fly, and you are the test pilots, but then things inevitably go wrong, and the aliens basically regain control of their ship, and you go on an out-of-control ride experience with them. The queue line has some pretty impressive pre-shows that play throughout the indoor portion of the queue, as well as a UFO that you actually walk through to get to the station of the ride on the other side. The effect is cleverly achieved by having super large mirrors on one side of the main building, making it seem like the UFO is a full-size ship when it's actually only half of a ship due to the station being on the other side. The station itself has some pretty good theming as well, with aliens in capsules, and that's when you realize the aliens took over the ride, and one of them goes on the speaker and kind of antagonizes you before you get on the train, which is a nice touch. The trains also arrive at the station with no people in them due to a separate unload station, which is a nice effect to add to the theming that you are going on an unhinged UFO flight. The ride's restraints are the standard Premier Ride lap bars that are pretty bulky, but are much better than the over-the-shoulder restraints that used to be on the attraction. The ride stats are somewhat modest, but this ride packs a punch with them, including a 54-mile-per-hour launch, 4 inversions, and 2,705 feet of track, even though the ride is only 74 feet tall. Now that we got the stats out of the way, let's get into see how it rides. For this section, I'm going to use Poltergeist at Six Flags Fiesta Texas as an on-ride POV, due to it being much easier to see what's actually going on, and both rides are actually clones of each other. So just imagine you can't really see anything, and there's some colorful lights throughout the ride's layout on Flight of Fear. The ride begins with a 54-mile-per-hour launch, which has a good first kick to it, but isn't nearly as fast as an acceleration as some other Premier launch coasters has done recently. The ride then rises into its first set of inversions, a Cobra roll, which includes the ride's first 2 inversions. The ride then rises into a Sidewinder inversion directly after, which all give some pretty intense positive forces to start the ride off. The ride then stays up towards the top of the building for a while until it reaches a mid-course brake run that completely stops the ride. The ride then goes through some turns and a corkscrew at the very end of the ride before it goes into the final brake run and eventually the unload station. Overall, Flight of Fear is an extremely well-themed attraction and easily the best themed ride at the park. I would say it's in the top half of the coasters at the park, but just barely. I like how long the ride is, and the theming is fantastic, and that corkscrew is especially fun with hang time all the way through. The ride is not the smoothest in the world, however. It's janky, to be honest, but it's not unbearable, especially with lap bars. The ride is very intense and is a fun launch, but is far from my favorite launch coaster or even Premier Rides coaster, those being Velocicoaster and Mr. Freeze, respectively. You should definitely check out this coaster when you visit Kings Island, but I would suggest riding early in the day along with Orion, because this ride can get quite the wait time due to its low capacity, and I actually missed it the first time I went to the park due to it having a 2-hour line that didn't move a ton. As long as you rope drop the ride, you shouldn't wait longer than 30 minutes, and even if the park is packed all day. Be sure to subscribe for more content and be on the lookout for more coaster reviews and other theme park videos in the near future.